I never thought I'd be recounting this story. It's been years, but the memories are as fresh as if they happened yesterday. I'm Jake, 23 now. I was part of a group of 4 friends who ventured into the abandoned Maryland Carnival. What was supposed to be a night of thrills turned into a nightmare that none of us would ever forget. It all started on a crisp autumn evening. Kind of evening where the air is cool and the leaves rustle underfoot, giving a sense of adventure. Emily, Sarah, Tom, and I decided to explore the old carnival. We had heard the rumors, how it was haunted, how strange things happened there. But we were skeptical. Emily was the most enthusiastic, always looking for paranormal experience, while Tom and I were more interested in proving the whole thing was just hype. Sarah, on the other hand, was the researcher of the group. She'd read about the carnival's history and was curious to see if the stories held any truth. As we approached the carnival, the rusty gates loomed before us. They were overgrown with ivy and looked as if they hadn't been touched in decades. The sense of foreboding grew stronger as we pushed through. The carnival's grounds were eerie in the moonlight, with the Ferris wheel towering above us like a silent sentinel. The carousel, once colorful, was now faded and grim, and the food stalls looked like remnants of a forgotten world. We joked and laughed to keep the mood light. The silence of the place was unsettling. The old rides creaked in the wind, and shadows danced around us, playing tricks on our eyes. I set up my camera near the carousel, hoping to capture some atmospheric shots. Emily and Sarah wandered towards the funhouse, drawn by its creepy allure, while Tom and I stayed behind, making fun of the whole situation. That's when I first saw him. At the edge of the carnival, a figure appeared, obscured by shadows. He was cloaked in a dark, hooded jacket, its face hidden beneath the hood. Something about him didn't sit right with me. I called out to Emily and Sarah, but by the time they turned around, the figure had vanished. Emily, always the bold one, suggested we check out the old house in the back of the carnival. It was a dilapidated structure with broken windows and a sagging roof. The kind of place that looked like it had been left to rot for years. We followed her, our flashlights casting eerie beams in the darkness. The house was filled with old furniture covered in dust, and the air was thick with decay. The atmosphere inside was heavy, almost oppressive. We spread out to explore, and I remember feeling uneasy as the floorboards groaned beneath our feet. That's when we heard it, a scraping sound, like metal dragging on the floor. My flashlight flickered, and when it came back on, the dark figure was there again, standing in the doorway. He had a knife, and the gleam of it in the dim light sent a jolt of fear through me. Panic set in instantly. Emily grabbed Sarah, and we all sprinted towards the exit. The figure advanced slowly, his knife glinting with every step. The carnival, which had seemed so whimsical earlier, now looked menacing. The Ferris wheel creaked, and the carousel's music box started playing a haunting melody on its own. We ran through the grounds, the rides and stalls turning into distorted shadows in our frantic escape. The funhouse, which had seemed like a bizarre attraction, now felt like a trap. The mirrors distorted our reflections, and every whisper in the darkness made us jump. We pushed through, trying to stay ahead of the figure. The exit gate seemed miles away, and the sounds of our pursuer grew louder, more menacing. We finally reached the gate, pushing it open with all our strength. As we stumbled into the open field beyond, we looked back to see the carnival entrance closing behind us. The figure had disappeared. We were outside, gasping for breath, our hearts pounding in our chests. We rushed to the nearest town and reported the incident to the police. They took our statements, but the area was searched thoroughly with no sign of the figure or any disturbances. To our dismay, there were no working CCTV cameras around the carnival, which meant there was no evidence to corroborate our story. Police dismissed it as a prank or a figment of our imagination. Carnival, now completely off limits, was left to decay further. We tried to move on, but the experience had left us deeply shaken. Emily and Sarah were especially affected, their interest in the paranormal turning into a source of dread. Tom, who had always been the skeptic, couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong. In the years that followed, memories of that night haunted us. We never returned to the carnival, and it was eventually demolished to make way for new development. The site was transformed, but the shadows of that night remained with us. I still remember the fear in Sarah's eyes, the eerie sound of the carousel's music, and the cold, calculating gaze of the man with the knife. Sometimes, I wonder if what we experienced was a twisted joke or something far more sinister. The carnival is gone. The terror of that night is very much alive in our minds. The abandoned Maryland Carnival will always be a dark chapter in our lives. Chilling reminder of something that seems like an innocent adventure can turn into a nightmare. Hi, my name is Alex. I'm 28 years old and live in a small town just outside New Orleans. I had an important exam coming up the following week, so I was buried in books and notes. Pressure was intense, and the stress was beginning to weigh heavily on me. That Saturday, I decided to take a break. A local carnival had just opened for the weekend, and I thought a quick visit might help me clear my mind. I'd heard it was a bit rundown, but I wasn't expecting anything unusual. I arrived at the carnival late in the afternoon. The bright lights and music were a welcome distraction from my studies. Carnival was indeed old, many of the rides and booths showing signs of age. There was something charming about it. I wandered through the midway, taking in the sights and sounds. One of the attractions that caught my eye was a small game booth where you could win prizes by guessing the right numbers. It seemed simple enough, and I decided to give it a try. As I approached, I noticed the booth had a pair of headphones hanging on a hook. "Try the music game with these," the operator said, gesturing to the headphones. "It's a lot of fun." I put on the headphones and selected a game. The operator explained that it was a game where you had to identify songs from short clips. I was excited. It sounded like a relaxing way to unwind. As I started the game, I expected to hear familiar tunes. Instead, the headphones were silent. Puzzled, I adjusted them, trying to get the audio to work. Then I started hearing something that made my skin crawl. Instead of music, I heard faint, sorrowful cries, like distant, mournful wails. I tried to convince myself it was a malfunction. The cries grew louder, more desperate. "Hello? Is someone there?" I called out, pulling the headphones off. The noise stopped abruptly. I looked around the booth, but there was no one else nearby. I felt a chill run down my spine. I left the game booth, my hands trembling. Prize had been unsettling, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I tried to enjoy the rest of the carnival, but the experience haunted me. Every time I passed by the booth, I felt an irrational urge to avoid it. That night, I tried to study. The cries from the headphones echoed in my mind. I couldn't focus, and sleep eluded me. The next day, I decided to forget the carnival and concentrate on my exams, but the disturbing sound lingered. From that day on, I avoided using headphones altogether. The thought of hearing those cries again was too disturbing. I threw away my old pair of headphones and even avoided listening to music through speakers whenever possible. The experience left me with a deep-seated unease, and I couldn't bring myself to revisit the carnival or even speak about it to anyone. As I prepare for the upcoming exams, I often think about that day and the unsettling cries I heard. It remains a chilling reminder of how something that seems benign can turn into a haunting experience. To this day, I avoid carnival rides and game booths. I'm not sure what caused the strange sounds that night, whether it was a technical malfunction or something more sinister. But I've learned to trust my instincts and avoid things that unsettle me. Sometimes, I wonder if someone else has had a similar experience or if the carnival has claimed other victims. All I know is that the carnival visit was a turning point for me, making me more cautious and more aware of the things that seem just a little too unsettling. If you ever find yourself at a seemingly harmless carnival, remember this story. Some experiences are best left unexplored, and some fears are best not confronted. I am Evan Carter, 27-year-old graphic designer with a penchant for quirky, nostalgic outing. On a crisp autumn evening, my friends and I decided to visit the local carnival, pop-up event that promised a night of vintage games and nostalgic fun. We were drawn by the neon lights and the lure of classic carnival games, reminiscent of our childhood. Little did we know, this seemingly innocent outing would lead us into a dark, terrifying ordeal. Carnival was a cacophony of bright colors and lively music, atmosphere buzzing with excitement. Amidst the laughter and cheers, we made our way through rows of booths and ride. We were particularly drawn to a small, unassuming game stall tucked away in a corner of the carnival grid. The stall's sign read, "Spin the wheel, win a prize." It seemed simple enough: spin the wheel and win a prize. The prizes were cheap trinkets, but the stall had an eerie charm. I decided to give it a try. The wheel was old-fashioned, adorned with faded colors and worn paint. The attendant, an older man with a grizzled face and a missing tooth, greeted me with a tired smile. He handed me a small token and gestured towards the wheel. As I spun it, the wheel creaked and groaned, its ancient mechanism straining with each turn. Finally stopped on a section marked Grand Prize. The attendant's smile widened. "Congratulations, you've won the grand prize." He reached under the counter and pulled out a small, ornate box wrapped in dark red paper. The box was surprisingly heavy for its size. He handed it to me with a nod and a whispered, "Enjoy." We all laughed and joked about my good fortune as we walked away from the stall. I could feel the weight of the box in my hand, contents hidden from view. We decided to open it later when we returned to our car. As we left the carnival, the atmosphere began to change. The once vibrant colors seemed duller, and the cheerful sounds of the carnival grew distant. A beeping sense of unease settled over us. Back at the car, we gathered around to open the box. Inside was an intricately carved wooden figure of a jester, with exaggerated features and a wide, menacing grin. Craftsmanship was impressive, but there was something unsettling about the figure. Its eyes seemed to follow us as we examined it. The moment I touched the figure, a chill ran down my spine. I tried to brush it off as a figment of my imagination. Over the next few days, strange occurrences began to plague me. Objects in my apartment seemed to move on their own, and I started hearing faint, eerie laughter at night. At first, I attributed these events to stress and overwork. However, as the days went by, the occurrences became more frequent and unsettling. One evening, while preparing dinner, I heard the laughter again. It was louder this time, echoing through the apartment. I followed the sound to the living room, where I found the jester figure sitting on the coffee table, its grin more pronounced than before. I had distinctly remembered putting it on the bookshelf. My heart raced as I realized that something was terribly wrong. Determined to uncover the source of the disturbances, I decided to investigate the carnival stall where I had won the jester figure. The carnival had long since packed up and left, but I managed to track down the owner of the game stall, an elderly woman who ran a small antique shop. I showed her the jester figure and asked about its origins. Her face grew pale as she examined the figure. "This isn't just a prize," she said, voice trembling. "It's cursed. There's a dark history behind it." She explained that the figure had been part of a collection of cursed objects, each associated with tragedy and misfortune. The carnival had acquired them through dubious means, and the figure had a particularly sinister reputation. The woman told me about a series of accidents and disappearances linked to the figure. People who had won or come into contact with it had experienced a range of misfortunes, from financial ruin to personal tragedies. The figure was said to harbor a malevolent spirit that fed on fear and despair. As I left the antique shop, the weight of the woman's words hung heavily over me. The disturbances in my apartment grew more intense. Shadows seemed to move on their own, and the laughter grew louder and more malicious. I began to see glimpses of the jester figure in my peripheral vision, always grinning, always watching. One night, I awoke to find the jester figure on my bed, its eyes glowing with an eerie light. I tried to move it, but my hands felt as though they were being pulled away. A sense of dread enveloped me, and I felt as though something was watching me from the darkness. Figure's grin seemed to widen, and I could hear the laughter echoing through my room. Desperate for help, I reached out to a local paranormal investigator. They agreed to come to my apartment to perform a cleansing ritual. As they prepared their equipment, they sensed a strong negative energy emanating from the jester figure. The ritual involved burning sage and chanting, but the figure remained unaffected. The investigator warned me that the spirit attached to the figure was powerful and not easily driven away. Realizing that the curse was beyond my control, I decided to take drastic measures. I returned to the carnival's abandoned grounds, where I had won the jester figure. The site was overgrown and desolate, a ghostly reminder of its former vibrancy. I found the old game stall, now decrepit and covered in dust. With a sense of finality, I placed the jester figure back on the stall and attempted to return it to the place where I had won it. As I did, the ground trembled, and the air grew cold. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, its presence overwhelming and oppressive. It was as if the spirit of the jester was manifesting itself in a physical form. I fled the scene, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel the presence following me, its malevolent energy closing in. The laughter grew louder and more distorted, echoing in my ears. I stumbled through the darkness, my mind consumed by fear and desperation. In the weeks that followed, I moved out of my apartment and relocated to a new city. The disturbances ceased, but the memory of the cursed jester figure haunted me. I could never forget the terror it had brought into my life. I tried to reach out to others who had experienced similar encounters, hoping to find solace in shared experiences. The carnival, meanwhile, remained a mystery. The site was eventually cleared and redeveloped, but whispers of its dark past lingered. The jester figure was never found, and its fate remains unknown. Some say it still wanders, searching for its next victim. Years have passed since that fateful night, but the fear never truly leaves me. I occasionally hear stories of strange occurrences linked to carnival prizes, and each one sends a shiver down my spine. I've come to realize that the jester figure's curse was not just a superstition, but a real, tangible force that preyed on my fears. I share my story as a warning to others, hoping to prevent them from falling into the same trap. Carnival may be gone, but the malevolent spirit of the jester figure remains in the shadows, waiting for its next chance to strike. Beware of the seemingly innocent prizes, for they may harbor secrets far darker than you could ever imagine.